Good evening, everyone. So I get to talk about Dawn. It's an honor to stand here in front of all of you this evening to recognize Dawn Davis. I'm indebted to Dawn in immeasurable ways, not only as a writer, but also as a reader. For decades, Dawn has become a formidable force in the field of publishing, a force that has introduced readers to the humor of well-known comedians, the memoirs of public figures, Pulitzer Prize-winning fiction, nationally respected collections of essays and poetry, and scholarly and popular biography. Her talents allow her to cross fields and genre, as well as place and time. Now, I met Dawn in the winter of 2015, and I'd finished drafting a manuscript that would be my first attempt at writing history for a popular audience. I'm an academic, and the world of trade publishing was brand new, exciting, and intimidating. My agent asked me what I was looking for in an editor, and I'm not certain that I had the appropriate answer. My first thought was simply someone who would buy my book, right? That was it. She asked me what, in retrospect, would be a simple and honest question, but one that startled me. She asked, "Erica, is it important for you to work with an African-American editor?" And I paused, because to be honest, the world of academic publishing never presented such an option. And I replied something like, "Are there any?" A question that perhaps speaks to a larger issue. My agent made certain that I met with a wide and varied list of incredible editors. But my meeting with Dawn was different. I had done my research. After all, I'm an historian. And I quickly learned that she had edited so many of the books that I respected. Wench and Balm by Dolan Perkins Valdez, Ida, A Sword Among Lions by Paula Giddings, Chris Garner's The Pursuit of Happiness, and of course, The Known World by Edward P. Jones. I walked into her office on a cold day in March, and there she was. Stacks of manuscripts were piled everywhere, on her desk, on her counters, on the floor. Words were all around us. Her easy yet commanding manner instantly wooed me. And while she accepted me as an author who could write an authoritative work of nonfiction, it was clear that she fell in love with the story and with the people that I had presented. This acquisition could have been seen as a risky move for some, an unknown academic writing a book that framed our nation's first president as something other than a military hero who defeated the British and helped to found our country. This was a book about an enslaved woman who was owned by George and Martha Washington, a fugitive that prompted the president to show his slave-catching hand. This could be explosive, yet that didn't intimidate Dawn. It was a story that needed to be told. I was in awe. In front of me was a woman who could acquire bestsellers from Steve Harvey and also edit some of the most important biographical work in African-American women's history, from Mary Prince to Ida B. Wells, and now Ona Judge. My faith and trust in Dawn was immediate. She was patient with me, reminding me to stay clear of the dense and inefficient prose of the traditional academic. Her editor's pen was graceful and smooth, yet exact like a surgeon's scalpel. My respect for Dawn grew daily. I learned that she started the only online national black book club, the Inkwell, a book club that would bring together a community of readers that would read good books and influence book sales. She was invested in bringing booksellers, authors, and publishers together to support African American authors. Was there anything she couldn't do? Many editors prefer to work from behind the scenes. They help birth books that change our lives and then step aside to allow their authors to shine. And tonight we turn that spotlight around to celebrate the very best of literary midwifery. Tonight we celebrate Dawn Davis. Let me grab you the award.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Erica, I'm going to have some words for you in a minute, as I am prone to do, but I want to start my remarks by recalling an evening, an event that I shared with Edward P. Jones, the author who has been alluded to and who's here tonight. And sometimes Edward and I remember things slightly differently, so I hope I got this right. But when Edward won the PEN Malamud Award for his collection, his work of short stories, at the celebration, I recall that you said when you get to the end of a particularly beautiful story or a particularly beautiful passage, you turn to the author's photo and you say, you did that. And that year, Nam Lee had won for The Boat. And I confess tonight, as I look around this room and enjoyed the cocktail reception, the same thoughts flooded my head. When I get to a particularly beautiful passage of a book, or I look at a book that was perfectly published, as my colleagues at Simon & Schuster did, with All the Light You Cannot See, or most recently with The Friend, I turn to the acknowledgments page to see who was involved, and I think, you did that. So while I am so honored that Poets and Writers selected me and the board tonight to stand here, I know that it could be any one of you, the authors, the agents who really work before the submission, my fellow editors, and the team that works to publish the book. So I'm really honored to call you my colleagues. If you're honoring me, you're also honoring all the mentors that I've had along the way, and I've had so many, and they have been so generous with their knowledge. And I won't list them here, in part because publishers, Poets and Writers did a very beautiful profile on all the people who've helped me, and I want to thank Poets and Writers for that, and also for this evening. But there were a couple of people I didn't list. The first is really a tribe of people. There's been a lot of talk about diversity in publishing, and if you think the ranks are thin now, you can only imagine what it was like when I started over 2 decades ago. But there was a tribe of people who kept me afloat and provided a lot of merriment along the way, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention them. I'm thinking of editors like Janet Hill, Sharice Grant, Malaika Adero. I'm thinking of agents like Faith Childs and Marie Brown, who is on the boards of Poets and Writers. I'm also thinking of Manny Barron, who many of us enjoyed and remember his thunderous laugh, and really so very supportive. I also want to thank Carrie Freemouth, who we lost last year. For the writers in the room, I hope you're all lucky enough to have a Carrie Freemouth in your life. She's one of those people who works behind the scenes, never seeking credit, late into the night, figuring out ways to turn a no, there's not enough money in the budget to I've found a way. At Amistad, she helped me and an all-black, all-female team, maybe the first of its kind, to publish a novel I fell in love with from the very first page, Edward P. Jones's masterwork, The Known World. And the truth is, I wouldn't be standing here tonight were it not for Carrie's just unbridled faith. When I was writing these remarks, I thought of that all-black, all-female team as a kind of Wakanda forever force. But Wakanda is aspirational, and what we did at Amistad is real. I know it's real because it lives on in curricula. It lives on when people tell me how much a novel like Winch meant to them. I see it on people's shelves when I enter their home, so it was real. And there's one person from that team who is here tonight who came all the way from South Carolina, and that is Raquel Henderson, who was my associate publisher, who also made magic happen for books. Raquel pioneered the first book video before that was even a thing, and she did it for Bridget Davis's Shifting Through Neutral. So Raquel, you are a rock star. I want to thank my family. Having a mother who's an editor is not easy. We really do our real work, the contemplation of your work, the editing, the reading on the weekends, and that is also time that really belongs to our children. I confess that I have shown up at a few flag football games for a few throws, ducked into Starbucks to edit a few more pages, only to show up at the end of the game to cheer really loudly. And while my children knew that I wasn't there, they never let me feel guilty about it. And in part, it's because my husband, Mac LaFollette, leaned all the way in, not only on the weekends, but all the time. So thank you, Mac, Dane, Baija. I want to also thank my mother, who flew all the way in from California. But really, she also flew anytime I had a particularly long edit. She would, particularly when the kids were young, fly in to make that possible. So thank you, Mom. More than anyone, I want to acknowledge the authors who are here. You don't have a travel budget, so that you made it here is very meaningful for me. Erica Armstrong Dunbar, your writing and storytelling reminds us that even historians and scholars can use poetry and lyricism when they tell stories, and when they do, more people are called to grapple with this nation's complicated history. I want to thank all of the writers who came. I hope I don't miss anyone. First, I want to mention Constance Chin, who only traveled a few blocks. I first signed Constance up when she was right out of college. She's a polymath. We lost touch. Recently reconnected with her and found out she is a much sought-after plastic surgeon on Park Avenue. And I thought, oh great, I'll get the publisher's discount from all the squinting and reading tiny script, but she does much more noble work and works with women in reconstructive breast surgery. So thank you, Constance. There's so many. I want to thank Bill Chang, who came from Queens, evidently the borough that Amazon is not going to go to. Thank you, Bill. I want to thank Thomas Mullen. Is there anything you can't write? Dolan, I already mentioned how beautiful your novel is. In from DC. I want to thank, Erica I think of as the Beyonce of scholars, and I think of Paula Giddings as the Aretha of scholars. She wrote, as Erica mentioned, Ida B. Wells, who also used the pen and the power of the pen to fight against lynching. So Paula, I'm so honored that you made it. For an organization that celebrates poets, I have to mention Lorna Goodison. She is the Poet Laureate of Jamaica. Thank you for coming. It means the world to me. And finally, I do want to thank Edward P. Jones. Publishing your work changed my life, not only professionally, but it really showed me how fiction can change the limits of what we think is possible in a very visceral way. So thank you, Edward. I know you don't even like evenings like this, so it really means the world to me. And I want to say, for all of you authors, we know that you have a choice when you get to pick who you get to collaborate with, and it has meant the world to me beyond my family and my friends when you choose to partner with me. I'm forever grateful. Thank you.